our front of house teams to come in as teams. And so we schedule them with differential starts depending upon when we anticipate the need for the volume, but we're trying to keep teams together. So we'll have a team that does days for a while, and then they'll switch to evenings, and we're trying to kind of keep them together. And so we end up with essentially 3 teams for each floor of our place, and that gives us 2 operating shifts a day, 7 days a week. Social distancing is the big deal in terms of the provincial health officer's orders, in terms of what WorkSafe is talking about, and in terms of what the health inspectors are looking for. The provincial health officer and WorkSafe have said that we must keep 2 meters between everybody all the time. It's difficult to do. And when we can't do that, they're asking us to be wearing masks or shields. We put a table in front of our bar so that anybody standing at the bar on the patron side, by virtue of where they're standing, are more than 6 feet away from the bartender on the other side. We've set up 2 lines to each bar so that we can run 2 bartenders to try to expedite the process. We have gone to a style of service that we did back in the 80s. It's called self-service, which is what many, many tap rooms already do. And in the process of doing that, one of the things that we were needing to accomplish was we had to dump a lot of payroll. We are therefore asking our guests to come to the bar and order, pick up their drink, go for a walk, find a table. On the tables, we have little table numbers, and on the back of that is a QR code, which takes them straight to a link on our website where the menu is available to them. We also have our menus up on chalkboards throughout the building. Thereby, we're negating the need for menus that are menu covers or single-use disposable menus. And so far, it's being ridiculously well received, and people are very happy to go down that route. The challenge that we ran into yesterday afternoon when the health inspector arrived was we were functioning on a model of requiring there to be 2 meters, 6 feet between the tables. We fortunately have 12 by 12 floor tiles, so it's pretty easy to do the count. The health inspector wanted 2 meters or 6 feet between the backs of back-to-back chairs. We had previously interpreted that to be something in the neighborhood of 3 feet. So the result of that was that we had to whip out another 4 tables and 10 chairs yesterday afternoon. In spite of all that, operating on only 1 floor in our building, operating at 50% capacity of the building, operating at about 30% of occupancy on that floor, we still did half the volume that we did the same day last year. So the demand is there. And I think there's a number of features that one can do to maximize flexibility. We have inside lots of draw leaf tables. These tables work for 2 guests, for 1 guest, for 4 guests, and they'll expand for up to 6 guests. It means that we need to be nimble in moving chairs around so that when a table wants to grow to a larger number, we need to whip some chairs out of the way surrounding it so that it's not possible for a guest in a self-seating scenario to get into what they would call a crowding situation. On our exterior, on the patios, we cut down some wine barrels. We had some 20-foot long planks sanded down, and we made, we have essentially 80 feet of counter seating now. In our case, it faces the water, faces the view. And the thinking behind this is that in each of these sections between various barrels, we have in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 chairs are available. So people, if they're a group, they can take up the whole section. If they're not a group, then they can spread themselves out. And what we've noticed is that there is a need and also an acceptance by the public to help manage them in that situation. So for example, day before yesterday, we had 2 different parties sitting essentially next to each other. And we just asked one of the parties if they would mind moving 2 chairs down, thereby getting the social distancing. And they went, oh, sure, no problem. And I could see that the challenge that was coming was that the sun was moving, so that soon they would be in the shade. So we just have to work around these kinds of practicalities. But the public is so grateful to be back on the premise that they'll go along with anything. They just want to be here. They want to talk to us. They want to say thank you for being here. So I think it's just up to us to accommodate them and, again, make them feel secure, feel safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So you kind of dove into it great. With the customer experience, it has completely shifted regardless of if they're coming in or if they're picking up to go. There's been a whole new experience that is now at hand for breweries. So I know you talked about safe ordering and what your team has done. Here's some other examples we've seen, just showcasing them on social media and really giving them clear direction on where to go, what hours of operation are happening, along with showcasing what the facility now looks like. So it's not intimidating when they enter, or it's not a completely blinded experience, but they do have some type of reference to what they're going to be doing, along with the hand sanitation additions. And then I know you talked about food service and what that kind of looks like now as well. So how do you handle that in those situations? But one other piece from the customer experience for breweries has always been brewery tours, and how do you accommodate this? BC has put into place that they are not encouraging these during phase 2. And if you must do them, that they be in groups of less than 6. So one idea we've seen is actually from a brewery in the UK. It's Duration Brewing, and they are offering virtual tours where you sign up. You get a 30-minute tour of the brewery with the owners. You walk around. You have 4 beers shipped to your house, so you can do a tasting with them, and you can ask them questions. Another cool piece that they added was a local artist designed a notebook that's also sent within the beer pieces. So it just kind of gives you an added level of keeping that contactless experience, but doing it virtually, while those type of avenues aren't necessarily at hand to use. So next we'll kind of dive into updated. Oh,
can I just jump in on that one too?
Yeah, absolutely.
We have as well created a virtual tour, and it's on our website. And on our website there's an icon, and it's called Behind the Scenes, and we have a series of 8 videos that tell our story in depth, and it's as much as people want to get. And so then scattered throughout the facility, we have little plaques, or 5x7 plaques, which have QR codes on them. And it takes them to where they are in the building and just tells some stories.
Very cool.
And it's really fun to do.
Yeah. And it's an easy way to tell your history too. So
yeah.
Awesome.
And we have not implemented it yet, but we will sell the brewery tours, which comes with a tasting. And so we're inviting people to do the tour, take your, there's a printed piece that goes with it. We tear off a corner, take it to the bar, and we'll give you a flight.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So then I think you started diving into your new policies, especially the updates you've made within the facility. Do you mind diving into those a little bit deeper, along with the staff policies that are now in place?
Sure. So as I indicated, and as I've talked to our guests when they come in now, we had a massive payroll. We had a $3 million payroll here. And when your revenue gets cut in half, something's got to go. So we broke it down into teams, and we're asking our teams to get rid of the hierarchies. We don't have managers anymore. We're all together. We're all in this together. And it's kind of language that government has drilled into us, and the public is very receptive to it. And so as people come in, both guests and staff, we talk to them like, are you guys okay? Any issues, any flu-like symptoms, any colds? Take the temp, log them in. And the same thing at when guests come through the front door, we want to ask the same thing. You guys, are you okay? We want to make sure everybody's safe. And we actually do have a thermometer that if the person who's first greeting the guest thinks that the guest might have some issues, we'll just say, can we just be sure? Would you mind if we take your temp? We log all the guests in. We take the name and telephone number of somebody from each party. And again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create traceability. At some point in time, something will happen to one of us, and the health authorities are going to come looking, and we need to be there to help them track down through our supply chain for any suppliers, through our staff, and through our guest list, who has been in the building. And I think if we all do that, then we are seen to be working with the health authorities and making their job so much easier. And it was interesting in the sessions that I was involved in with the Restaurant Association and coming up with protocols and policies. The major concern of all of us was that we not screw this up and that we not get sent back to phase one lockdown again. None of us want that to happen. So that overabundance of staff policies and just ensuring that we follow through shift by shift. Whenever people come in the back door, we've installed a new hand washing sink. So that's the first thing that happens as they come in the building, is to wash their hands. I had a conversation yesterday with the health officer about masks and gloves. I personally am not a fan of gloves. I think gloves give a false sense of security. And if you don't wash your gloves as you would wash your hands, you're not accomplishing anything. As I said, we have masks on everybody in the kitchen. And I think that as much as anything, that's a demonstration that we in the kitchen are protecting the public to ensure that none of us are exhaling into their food, and so they need not be concerned. The issue of wearing masks was brought up by the health inspector, and he felt that people going to a table, delivering product, getting within 6 feet of the public should be wearing masks. Our staff don't want to do that. And what we're doing is we are essentially standing sideways. We are reaching in and putting the product on the table. And essentially what we're talking with is plates, and we're asking them to pass it around the table. And then we stand back. And so if there is a dialogue going on at the table, we just make sure we stand back. And we have some staff who are doing just like an amazing dance now in terms of how they move. And it's all about standing back so that people can pass each other. We just do what we can to minimize that whole experience. Our issue about gloves and hand washing is that whenever we change activities, we wash our hands. So if I'm walking through the floor of the facility or out in the patio and I walk by a table that's got some dirty dishes and stuff on it, I'll just pick it up and I'll take it back to an area where we stack them in bus bins and we toss the cutlery into a bin of sanitizer, and the next thing you do is you wash your hands. And so every time you change activity and you go from one shift area, or if I go into the kitchen, I wash my hands. If I go into the brew house, we wash our hands. And if we constantly do that, we are doing what we need to be doing. We do not have a designated break area where people gather, and it's the gathering that is of concern to the health authorities. They do not want to see 4 or 5 of us gathered around a table having a smoke, drink, and whatever. We are fortunate enough to have properties adjacent to us, and so people typically are going to go and sit in the garden and have a break and wash their hands when they come back in.
And I know you talked a lot about your facility updates, but one thing I know we had talked about are these awesome floor markers on where people can stand. So can you speak a little bit about that and how you guys have increased awareness when waiting in lines or ordering?
Sure. On the ventilation aspect first, we living here on the waterfront are able to just like kill the dampers on recirculation of air. And so all we're doing is bringing in 100% outside fresh air, and that's what we're pumping into the building. The air intakes are up high, they're out back, and so to be able to say to people that what's coming in is fresh outside air is, again, reassuring to them. In terms of how people access our facility now, one of our pinch points was coming in through the front door where we had built this retail area, and it was check-in, check-out for guest houses. To people exiting our facility, it was load up on chocolates, buy some packaged beer to go. There was a growler fill station, and all the incoming and outcoming exiting traffic went through that hallway, and that was immediately recognized as too crowded. So we built a new set of stairs coming up onto the side deck, and have asked the public who are coming into the bar or onto the patios to please come in via the side entrance. And so, everybody's got these floor markers, and what we noticed is that even if you just put colored tape on the asphalt, that people naturally line up on them. And so we went, we can have more fun than this. And so we developed a series of you're getting closer to great beer, or great beer is here when you actually get to the bar. And so we have a progression of these things just to tease people that here's where you want to go. Here's the reward at the end of this process. And it's a matter of just staging them back 6 feet apart from the entrance to the down bar, at the top of the steps on the deck, at the bottom of the steps on the deck, and down the asphalt towards the entrance to the property. And people are ridiculously well trained to stand on these spots. It's crazy.
It has become a new norm.
That is a new norm. In terms of garbage and stuff like that, we had a bunch of old kegs, and we cut the tops off them, cut the ends off them, turned them into garbage cans, and put grain bags in them. And so we have 4 of them by the entrance, because we're also doing takeout. So people are welcome to come into our retail area, buy a single or a 4-pack to go, and they're sitting at stools on upturned barrels with umbrellas in our parking lot and drinking their takeout. And that gives us extra patio space that at this point is not licensed. The authorities all know about it, and they're turning a blind eye. We are into the city to extend licensing to that area, but until we get it, we're just saying, hey, it's off sales, and people are just sitting on the curbs, and we can do much better than that. And so they've all went, yeah, okay. And it's been a bit of a social media windfall for us, that people are just showing up to see us in the patio or in the parking lots. And we are working to get onto the grass, which is city-owned land to the south of us. And again, it's like open up the space, give people access to space, keep people far enough apart seems to be the whole measure of the game at this point. So as you stagger back the lines, just get each party to stay 2 meters apart.
Yeah.
It works.
Next, we're going to dive into our fourth tip, which is diversifying your sales channels. If there's been any time that this really hit, it was definitely during COVID. So we found this funny cartoon where you always plan for the strategy to come down the road, and you have this elaborate plan, you know your objectives and your goals, but COVID literally came in like a wrecking ball and took out every plan and made it be adjusted to hit a lot faster. So we do think these shifts are here to stay and stay for a while. So how is it important, and where have we gotten this insight from? There's a really cool tool that we use called Google Trends, where we can put in different search terms and see what people are interested in knowing more about. So beer online is one that we did first, and you can see the spike in March when COVID started taking place. Beer delivery had the same effect, but something that was really interesting was a whole new term was created in search queries called beer curbside. Who would have thought? That would have been a 2020 trend, but it has been. And so this is the Canadian market and how people are searching for these. We've also seen different craft beer professional Facebook groups and associations like the Brewers Association put out a lot of surveys to try to help the brewing community better understand how the consumer is adjusting pre, during, and post-COVID. So you can see that these to-go, pickup, delivery options are going to be here to stay for the next bit. So how do you optimize those, and how do you incorporate them within your sales funnel? The great piece is that people are still drinking. You just have to find them in a couple different areas. So the first is definitely setting up that e-commerce store. And how do you set it up to be unique to you and your store? Pre-COVID, online beer sales made up about less than 1% of total revenue. Beer e-commerce continues to grow, and in 2019, it grew by 14%. And then online alcohol sales in general are currently up over 253% year over year. So it's definitely a trend. It's here to stay. And now that a lot of regulations have been adjusted around this, it continues to rise. So one big thing to help with this experience for the customer is accepting digital payments, being able to order ahead. It also helps your staff know your inventory amounts. Home delivery has become a large piece for some breweries on getting the product to their door, but also looking at how do you adjust your packaging to fit more of the consumer base, like bottles and cans, versus putting them into kegs. So where can you kind of adjust in those pieces? The next piece is making this very prevalent on the website, how they can buy your product, whether it's a pop-up like the bottom or what Spinnaker's is doing as the header and banner and forefront. And just keeping all of this updated on your website and your social and other external information about your hours and how they can buy your product and when your tap room is going to be open. I know, Paul, you had mentioned y'all are doing a QR code for the menu, and you have that available on your website. So there's a lot of different ways to make all of this information very prevalent online. Do you want to speak to anything about what Spinnaker's is specifically doing for this?
Yeah, I was never big into takeout. I'm like one of those ones that got hit by the wrecking ball. But what we saw was Mother's Day, we did $4,500 in sales for takeout. The following Saturday, we had a similar day. And that's revenue that at this point in time, we do not want to give up. We want to build on. We were fortunate to have invested heavily in a website last fall, and it's pretty easy for us at this point, and we're just going through the final proofings on making it an e-commerce platform as well. So we are indeed jumping into that one. I think it's important to remember that there is, let's say a third of the population who are freaked out by this whole thing, and they're still staying home. So that's a big piece of market that I think we do not want to give up on. We also need to remember that the delivery services are really expensive. 20, 30% going to the delivery company. There's a small one in Victoria called Tootie, and we've been working with them through our retail stores. But what we saw happening was that through our retail stores, the initial bump, the spike in the curve, we were up 40%, and it's kind of leveled off at 22% in one store and 25% in the other store, and we expect that to continue. What that means is that there's more opportunities for all of us to get our product into these stores. There are so many buy local campaigns going on. For a few years, I was head of Think Local Victoria, which has expanded to like a Buy BC program. So we got the Craft Brewers Guild doing a Buy BC. We've got the government doing Buy BC. We've got Think Local organizations promoting local products. So there's a golden opportunity for craft to increase market share. And it's really a matter of being able to work with retailers who have found it challenging to have to deal with inundations with reps and so forth, whilst their own staffing issues have been parallel to ours. But we are anticipating going back onto a growth curve in terms of package sales. And for those who are not into cans at this point, there are the mobile canning services. And excuse me, for not a lot of money, one can pick up a tabletop canner and start to do small runs on things, which means that people can take it home without having to do the growler thing. So I think there's lots of opportunities to explore.
Nice. So one way to kind of keep prevalent in front of the consumer is with everybody kind of being stuck at home, and we've seen that spike has gone up in streaming. A goal for social media that we suggest is posting 5 to 7 times a day on your stories, staying in front of your consumers so that they create a lot of awareness, but also kind of that FOMO of they're missing out on something that they could be engaged with. Instagram and Facebook are probably the 2 platforms we would highly recommend staying in front of, along with being able to post at the right time. The next slide is going to show you from Sprout Social where Instagram engagement is during the day, just to kind of give you a tip. This was pre-COVID, so just a heads up on that as well. And make sure to ask your customers when they do buy your product, can you tag us in it? Maybe it'll get a reshare, and it gains that organic traffic in order to continue to stay in front of potentially new customers that may not be drinking your brews. Then don't forget the hashtags. It's a great way for people to find your product, whether it's seeing what the competition is tagging or using your platforms like Instagram and Facebook to do the search queries to kind of better understand what are people even hashtagging in my area. And then kind of analyzing all of this with free tools that we've listed on here, and then also other ways that you can do that with your team. So here's that Sprout Social metrics that I mentioned. And then we also have authentic content. So how do you create this? It's a lot to ask, especially when your team may be at half capacity now, but it can be very simple. Post on your story a 1, 2, 3 step of how to order online. Make it very simple. Create that sense of FOMO, whether it's showing product or rolling out a new beer or doing something within your production team, whether it's packaging or producing it. Really showcase some different things to make people want to buy your beer. And then make it interesting. There's all the social platforms have a lot of filters. They have a lot of effects that you can really use just to make a simple concept a little bit more creative through either bouncing back on what they're doing or really zooming in on that piece. And last thing, people are missing people right now. So how can you showcase that staff member that the regulars really enjoy seeing a smile on their face? How can you highlight what they've been doing during this time? How can you maybe even highlight a random fact about them? But showcasing your people is going to be huge right now. Along with your personality. So creating fun videos, the video to the right kind of says sound on, and that's a team out of California. Someone caught them singing the YMCA song, and it just became this fun piece that a lot of people enjoyed. Do you have a mascot? Could they be doing simple tasks, whether it's working in the computer or producing the beer or selling it curbside? Make it light, make it unique so that it stands out to who you are and the brand that you're trying to showcase to your consumers. The last piece with this is creative offers. We saw this with Moody L's. They did an adopt a keg over a long weekend. That's really fun and just something completely different. Could you do a happy hour Thursdays that's more of a to-go happy hour versus an in-store happy hour and in the tap room? And then something we saw in our backyard here in North Carolina was partnering with a local food producer, or if you are a food producer, once they order, and they can request to have a pairing for that, but it's a surprise pairing. So it's kind of a fun little thing that you can do. You don't lose revenue on it. They're still paying for it, but it's just a different incentive that maybe they wouldn't, in a beer, they wouldn't normally try. And then the last thing is just community awareness and keeping that unique piece. There were 2 brew dogs in New York that started delivering to customers, and so it made national headlines. And then something more simple would just be something we saw with Container Brewing and showcasing how they're giving back to their community during this time. I know, Paul, we talked about what Spinnakers is doing with the Victoria Film Festival or Film Society, so didn't know if you wanted to speak to that any?
For sure. So I was having one of those days of creative madness, and I was walking around and I was looking up at this piece of wall from our parking lot, and Kathy Kay, who's the director of the Victoria Film Festival Society, is a frequent patron, and she happened to walk in the next day, and I just went and tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Hey, I'm so glad to see you. That I was thinking about you last night, and I think we should turn our parking lot into a drive-in." And I actually had thought about going to Gaston, our sheet metal guy, and getting them to make up some trays that we could hang off the windows. And like, could you guys come in and could you put a movie up on the side wall of our building, and it could be just like like in the '60s, the old school drive-in restaurant or drive-in theater. And then she got back to me a couple of days later and said, "Yeah, so how do you want to go about this?" And I had to say, I know nothing about what you guys do and what the economics on this are, but I just thought like something like that would be a really fun thing to do. So she said that they had been turned down by the city and that they cannot do their annual screenings in Beacon Hill Park. And I said, well, why don't we do them across the street? So it turns out they have a blow-up screen and a back projector, and we have this huge parking lot across the street from us. And about the same time, the health officer came out and said that for drive-ins, there will be a maximum of 50 cars. And we just went, bingo. So they're going to do this 2 nights in June. We worked it out with the people who own the property across the street. They're going to tie their blow-up screen to a train car that's on a track there. They're going to use another train car behind to back project onto it. And the other thing that the health officer said was that people will not be allowed to get out of their cars once the movie starts, except to go to the bathroom. And so we just went, cool. So everybody needs to come to our place and load up on off sales and snacks and go and sit across the street in your car and watch a movie.
There you go.
So we'll see what happens. All for fun. And I think to your previous point on social media, it's have fun. People want fun in their lives, and anything that we can do that's fun will get picked up and shared, and just goes around and comes around.
Yeah, absolutely. So to kind of wrap up this section, we've got 5 keys to marketing success, and hopefully you guys can apply them. The first is just to do it. and then to do it again and do a little bit more, and then be able to measure and learn from it, and then just keep adjusting and doing it. And we do feel like that'll help take your team to the next level. Everything has to start somewhere. The last piece we're going to end on to kind of wrap everything up and to kind of harp in on a lot of things we've already talked about is just over communicating. I think Paul said it a lot. People just are unsure of what's going on, and they just want to know the safety precautions your team is taking to feel safe when they come to your restaurant or brewery. So, Paul, do you mind talking a little bit about how your team communications and what you guys are doing for this piece?
Sure. We're sending out, we're sending out regular emails to the teams, and it was kind of fun because one came out and it was from Spinnaker's managers, and I just went, come on, you guys. So we need to get rid of the word managers. Managers doesn't exist in our language anymore. We're all team together. And so we share communications on a regular basis. So whatever happened last night, somebody from the shift will just write a quick email and send it out to the team. And then the people coming in the morning, we have an opportunity to talk through what happened last night and the adjustments that we need to make. And so it's really easy. It's really effective. But the one thing that I would like to caution against is that when you're reaching out to the public, be ready. So we have not done any kind of email or marketing pushes to the public to tell them that we're here because we're going through soft openings. And inevitably, when you do a soft opening in a restaurant or a bar, things screw up. The systems don't work. The printer doesn't work. A printer blows a breaker and all the printers go down.
Yep.
And then the health inspector walks in the middle of it. So you need to take baby steps, and you need to get dialed in. You need to be absolutely confident in your systems that everything is going to be there for the support that you need. And what we're finding is that our challenge at the moment is trying to fit the people in that are standing at our door. And so our levels of engagement are perhaps more going to be focused on off-premise activity until we've got more capacity to be able to handle the trade that wants to come. And you know, there's articles going out in the media today in Victoria that 50% of the restaurants are going to close. They're not coming back. So to those of us who are left, I think we're going to be busy. Mm-hmm. And so we just need to be prepared to be able to do it in this new world of not being able to hug each other and high-five each other and have that close personal contact.
Yeah. The last thing I just wanted to mention for team communication is just those real-time updates. So with the shift changes and people in teams coming in and out and not being able to, like what you were saying, do that one-on-one connection and that being unencouraged in a sense right now, brewery management software can help with that. And so keeping your inventory up to real time, along with giving you reports and dashboards, just to see the business data really kind of helps bring all of that full circle with the email communications and the stand-ups when they can happen. That second piece is the customer communication. These are two different creatives that we've seen. One is just showcasing the new hours. The other is showcasing the new protocols. There's a lot of free resources like Canva to help your team create these social images and easily get them pushed out, whether it's online, email communication, however you guys can reach your audience. And then something simple that 33 Acres did was just a very simple post about when they would be open. Very simple, very easy, but it gives that personality and also kind of showcases their product as well. The last piece that we saw was a tutorial video from one of the breweries in North Carolina. It walks through the entire user experience from when they walk in the door until they leave after a good night. So we don't have time to show this right now, but we will send out this presentation, and there is a link here if you guys want to walk through what this looks like. It's just a great, easy tutorial on the new user or the new customer experience during this time. So that's all the information we have. If anybody has questions, we'd love to answer those in the last 5 minutes we have. Feel free to send them in through the Q&A or through the chat, and we'll give it about a minute, and then we'll wrap it up. Cool. So we did talk about a lot, and there's a lot of protocol now, and there's a lot of regulations. The Guild has done a great job on providing resources for the community in British Columbia. So we have all of those listed here from what we've received from the Guild, along with other resources. As a team at Ekos, we put together a lot of blogs, just kind of helping get creative minds around what's happening, how do you prepare for reopening. So we have all of these listed. And again, when we send this out, you'll be able to access all of these resources to hopefully help your team really bring that customer experience to life. So I don't see any questions. So thank you so much, Paul, for joining us today and giving your insights and Spinnakers. And thanks everyone else for being here.
Cheers.
Have a good one.
Go drink a beer.
Cheers.